Good evening, everyone, and welcome to IKG's Wisdom Wednesday. I am your host, Ajwa, and I am so happy to welcome you to tonight's programming. As always, we want to take a moment to let you know some housekeeping rules, some housekeeping notes for tonight's program. First, this is a Zoom webinar, so your cameras are automatically off and your audio is also off. So we do ask that you engage us via the chat and that you post any questions for our presenter in the Q&A box. As always, we want to acknowledge those of you who are joining us. We know from our family from all over the globe. So we're going to shout you out real fast. So we want to shout out our family checking in from Georgia. Georgia's in the house. We have Las Vegas, and that's Lawrenceville, Georgia. Thank you for joining us. We have Virginia, Atlanta in the house. Arlington, Virginia is in the house. We have, of course, Washington, D.C. That's where IKG is housed. So thank you for joining us. Adelphi, Maryland. Arlington, Texas. Hey, hey, welcome. We have LaGrange, North Carolina. Long Island, New York. Temple Hills is in the house. We have St. Paul, Minnesota. Welcome, family. We have Florida, Brooklyn, New York in the house. Baltimore in the house. Welcome. Of course, the mighty Chi-Town, Chicago. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Oakland, California. Thank you from checking in from the Bay. Let's see, Virginia. Who else have we got here? Staten Island, New York. Welcome. South Carolina. Hey, hey. Boots on the ground out there in South Carolina. Thank you for joining us. And as you all are coming in, definitely feel free to put a note in the chat to let us know that you are here. We are thankful that you are joining us. For those who may or may not be new, IKG Wisdom Wednesday is a free monthly lecture series that IKG hosts, and we've been hosting it for almost 20 years now. Can't believe it's been that long, but it's a free lecture series where we bring in speakers who speak the topics related to our people, our history, culture, music, religion, history, economics, all various topics that are meant to benefit the global Black community. So tonight, of course, will be no different. Tonight's actually special because we have our founder and director presenting. I want to also alert you to some programming that's coming up. In a moment, I will be placing IKG's website in the chat for you to check out our site. There, you'll be able to find information about our upcoming season of the Egypt on the Potomac field trips. The first field trip will take place on April 5th, 2025. And on our site, you will be able to purchase tickets and sign up for the field trip for April 5th or anyone throughout the season. You will also be able to go to the site to find all of the Wisdom Wednesday programs for this year, and you can register in advance. That way you can make sure you don't miss one. Okay, and now for tonight's program, we are so pleased again to have our founder and director, Tony Browder, speaking. Tonight, he will be speaking on the Clarke Enhanced History Project. He writes, Dr. John Henrik Clarke founded and led several organizations that shaped and defined the Black Studies movement of the 1960s. Dr. Clarke was an advisor to Kwame Nkrumah and Malcolm X, whose leadership inspired millions worldwide. He taught thousands of students in classrooms at Hunter College and around the world. Dr. Clarke was a founding member of the African Heritage Studies Association and the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization. Although he transitioned in 1998, Dr. Clarke's spirit lives on through the works of those he inspired. One of the most important lessons Dr. Clarke stressed is that the history of African Americans did not begin in slavery. Thanks to the teachings of Dr. Clarke, We know that. If the history of African people were a book of 1,000 pages, the story of enslavement would begin on page 996 and would only be 2 pages long. With this as its guiding principle, the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project was curated to tell the story of the first 995 pages of African and African American history. Tonight, Anthony Browder will share details of the opening of the Clarke Enhanced History Project. And now about our speaker, Anthony T. Browder. He is an author, publisher, cultural historian, artist, and an educational consultant. He is a graduate of Howard University's College of Fine Arts and has lectured extensively throughout the United States, Africa, the Caribbean, Mexico, Japan, and Europe on issues related to African and African American history and culture. Mr. Browder is the founder and director of IKG Cultural Resource Center and has devoted 30 years researching ancient Egyptian history, science, philosophy, and culture. He has traveled to Egypt 54 times since 1980 and is currently director of the Asa Restoration Project, which is funding the excavation and restoration of the 25th dynasty tomb of Karakomun in Luxor, Egypt. Browder is the first African American to fund and coordinate an archaeological dig in Egypt and has conducted 23 archaeological missions to Egypt since 2009. Mr. Browder's 3 decades of study have led him to the conclusion that ancient Africans were the architects of civilization and developed the rudiments of what has become the scientific, religious, and philosophical backbone of mankind. It is from this framework that IKG has concentrated its research and disseminated its findings. Through IKG, Mr. Browder sponsors lectures, seminars, cultural field trips of Washington, D.C., publishes his research, and has conducted study tours to Egypt, West Africa, South Africa, and Mexico since 1987. He is the author of 6 publications, including the bestsellers From the Browder File and Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, and the co-author of 6 publications, including 2 written with his daughter, Atlantis. All of Mr. Browder's publications are currently being used in classrooms around the world. Tony is an autodidact and describes himself as a chronicler of facts and information relative to the positive portrayal of the worldwide African experience. Please join me in welcoming and bringing to the stage Anthony Browder.
Thank you, Sister Adjoa. I appreciate the introduction. And I appreciate no longer having to do what you've been doing so well for so long. This has been a busy day for me. I just wrapped up an interview with Paul Coates on my radio show on WPFW, the Browder File, and took a little break in preparing for tonight's Wisdom Wednesday presentation and gearing up for activities this weekend where we do a soft launch of the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project. So let me begin by just bringing you up to speed on where things are now, and then I'll jump into my topic for the evening, and then we'll open the floor for some questions, and we'll move on to what the rest of life has in store for us. So today is a special day. Every day above ground is a special day, as I hear more people say. And yesterday was a very special day in my life in that yesterday, March 18th, was the birthday of my mother, who you see over my right shoulder, and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, my spiritual mother, who you see on my left shoulder. They both were born on March the 18th, 1935. They both lived their formative years in Chicago. and they both moved to Washington, D.C. in the 1970s, where they lived the rest of their lives. Some other interesting parallels between Dr. Welsing and my mom is that they passed within 44 days of each other. And I was blessed to be at both their bedsides when they made the transition, and was in a frame of mind as well as a good position, cultural position, to be able to assist in their passage from this world into the next world as they made their journey into the beautiful West. Today, March the 19th, marks the 10th anniversary of the passing of my mom. Excuse me, this year marks the 10th anniversary of the passing of my mom, and today, March the 19th, is the 10th anniversary of the passing of Dr. Ben. It was Dr. Ben who was responsible for taking me on my first trip to Africa in December of 1980. And as I share with audiences, it was that 13-day study tour with Dr. Ben that my world was turned right side up. And I'm sharing all this information with you this evening because it serves as a reminder that this is a season of remembering and a season of transition. We are very happily about to transition from the season of winter into the season of spring. Tomorrow is the first day of spring, which means tomorrow is the spring equinox. It is a time frame when the sun passes over the equator, and we'll have 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of nighttime. And after tomorrow, the days will lengthen by approximately 1 minute per day until we reach the summer solstice on June the 21st, where we'll have here in the DC area some 19 hours of sunlight. So, as Roy Ayers often said, I love the sunshine. And this is the season for life. This is the season of transition. This is the season of new beginnings. And so it's important to understand that the life is always about new beginnings. It's about old things transitioning and moving aside, and new things coming into view to open the way for us. And, what better way to talk about this transition period than to talk about people near and dear to us, people specifically near and dear to me, people who brought me into the world, people who opened my eyes to the ways of the world and truly helped me to understand that every ending is a new beginning. Sadness comes for a minute, but the future is ours if we understand it, if we understand how to manipulate the future and use it to our advantage. So it's all about Sankofa, going back and reclaiming the knowledge of the past, remembering our sacred obligation, our responsibility to go back and dig up the knowledge of the past to preserve it for future generations. And I was motivated to begin to take that challenge to heart upon returning from my first trip to Egypt with Dr. Ben. We got back in January of 1981, and I was ready to do something with my life. I was ready to do something with the information that I had just recently been exposed to. And what motivated me even more so to commit myself to doing something with this information was in February of 1981 when I met Dr. Clarke for the first time. He was the Black History Month speaker at Ujamaa Shule. And as I sat in the audience and watched Dr. Clarke, I literally fell in love with his spirit. I love his command of the language. I love his deep knowledge of African history. I appreciated the way that he didn't separate himself from the audience. He made everybody in the audience feel as though he was talking to us personally and that he wanted us to know what he knew. So Dr. Clarke is truly responsible for help shaping the person that you're listening to this evening. And it was as a result of my trip to Egypt with Dr. Ben, meeting Dr. Clarke, and discovering a world of information that had not been a part of my former educational process that led to my establishing IKG. IKG this year is 43 years old. Egypt on the Potomac this year will be 39 years old. Wisdom Wednesday this year is 20 years old. The IKG Culture Resource Center is 19 years old. The ASA Restoration Project is 16 years old and has formally come to an end. We have formally finished our mission with the ASA Restoration Project, which was to restore the knowledge of the Kushite presence in Kemet and to preserve the legacy of Dr. Asa Hilliard. We have been able to restore over 40 tombs on the west bank of Luxor, Egypt. And if all goes well, the temple tomb of Clarke will open to the public, hopefully, fingers crossed, eyes crossed, legs crossed, in November of this year. And if that happens, then I will plan to begin the process of making my last study tours to Egypt in 2026, where we'll take a group over in the summer of next year to visit the site. I may do a winter solstice tour in December of 26, and by 2027, I'm done with Egypt. I'm going to turn the reins over to Atlantis and let her run the operation for as long as she wishes to. But I think I've earned the right to step back and move on so that I can do some other things. I will keep you posted on our plans for 2026 as well as 2027. There may be a special event happening in 2027, so I'm going to wait until more things are aligned before I share that information with you. But as always, I would encourage you to stay tuned for more information to come. And tonight's presentation, tonight's Wisdom Wednesday, is the occasion for me to celebrate, to share with you about the work that we've been doing with the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project. This is a project that is 7 years old, 7 years in the making. So as I've been reflecting on these last 7 years, reflecting on the 10 years that CII, the Cultural Imperative Initiative, that was a work I started doing a decade ago, going out to California once a month to work with Deborah Watkins, her organization, a Black Education Network, to take this information to African-American high school students in San Jose, California. That endeavor resulted in CII, the Cultural Imperative Initiative, which I'll touch on. And yeah, just looking back at what we've done with the ASA Restoration Project, the IKG Cultural Resource Center, Wisdom Wednesdays, Egypt on the Potomac, and IKG itself, I've spent a lifetime creating these organizations, creating these institutions, and I'm ready to do some other things to be able to turn the projects over into the capable hands of people who I trust, people who have proven themselves to be competent at handling my children, so to speak. And Sister Adwa has done a masterful job of handling Wisdom Wednesdays. And so I'm so pleased that I don't have to carry that burden anymore. And that's what it's all about. All too often, what happens in many of our organizations is that the leader refuses to stop leading and they stay on past their prime. And so when they ultimately die, when they ultimately transition, the organization dies or transitions with them. That's not going to be the case with the work that I've been doing. This is work that should last for multiple lifetimes. And it's simply a matter of bringing in people who are competent, people who are trustworthy, people who have the love, who have the heart, who have the energy, who have the desire to keep something going so that others can benefit from information that has been curated and prepared for human consumption. So let me talk about the reason I'm here tonight. I'll be shifting in that I won't be doing the September Wisdom Wednesdays anymore. I won't be giving the updates on the Asa Restoration Project because the Asa Restoration Project is completed. But for those who know what my intentions were in the very beginning in 2008, the Asa Restoration Project was designed to oversee the excavation work in Egypt, but I always knew that that was going to be a temporary assignment, that that was going to come to a close. But what my larger objective was to continue to amplify the legacy of Asa Hilliard. And Asa Hilliard was a consummate educator. And so my goal was to bring that spirit back home, to bring that energy back here to the United States where it's sorely needed extremely badly. But we need to be involved in ensuring that we will not be erased, that we will not be moved back into a past that no longer benefits us. And so the John Henry Clarke Enhanced History Project affords me the opportunity to showcase the next phase of the Asa Restoration Project, which I'm now counting under the Cultural Imperative Initiative, CII. You'll be hearing me talk more about that in the coming years because it is imperative that we articulate what our culture is, what our traditions have been, and how we must become dutiful custodians of our cultural heritage and not allow it to be appropriated, hijacked, or misled by people who don't mean us well. So the Clarke Enhanced History Project is my response to my very first visit to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I'll never forget, I was in Egypt, in Luxor, Egypt, um, on stage doing a presentation at a conference that the Asa Restoration Project had coordinated in Luxor, Egypt, where we were bringing together scholars who were excavating and restoring 25th dynasty or late period tombs. Many people doing this work in Egypt work in isolation. They see themselves as competitors, and they're very reluctant to share their findings, to share their research with others for fear that people will steal their information. So through the Asa Restoration Project, we were able to sponsor at least 2 conferences where we brought scholars together to share our research, and we did site visits so that those within this collective would have an opportunity to see the work that was going on and to be inspired to go back and do our work more stridently. And so I was on the stage doing a presentation at the exact same moment, 5,000 miles away, that Barack Obama in September of 2016 was doing the formal opening of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. That's the only reason why I wasn't here in DC at that time to witness that event. But I finally had a chance the following month to go to the museum. And like the millions of people who flocked there the first year, I was impressed. I was impressed by the architecture of the building. I was impressed by the collections. I was impressed by how everything was laid out and displayed. But one thing bothered me, and that one thing was that the history portion of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the history portion begins 5 stories underground. And as you step off of that elevator, you step into a darkened space with a low ceiling, a space that was designed specifically to make you feel as though you were in a slave ship. So we're dumped into the Ma'afa. And as I walked through this space, the artist in me, the person who had aspirations of being an architect, is always looking at every environment that I'm in, looking at the design, looking at how the environment impacts the consciousness, the psyche of the people who move through it. And as I was ear hustling and watching people move through this space, this small, low ceiling, darkened space within the lower bowels of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, I saw my elders who were in shock, who were in tears. And I realized that many of them had never been exposed to the horrors of the Ma'afa. And I felt their pain, I felt their anguish, I felt their sorrow. And it touched my heart. It hurt me really to see that so many of our people were not prepared to uh, move through this space because they were not taught about the history of American enslavement. They were not taught about the European enslavement of African people. And so they did not know how to respond being dropped into this environment. And so I felt their pain. And as I talked with others who had also visited the museum, I found out that I wasn't the only one who was feeling that way. I had a chance to speak with several curators and docents at the museum over the years as I went back to visit various exhibits, went back for special programming, and I found that a number of people were feeling the same way. And I felt compelled to do something about it. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I felt a compunction to do something. But that idea, that desire, that motivation stayed with me for about 18 months until thoughts began to form in my mind. And the formation of those thoughts gave rise to an idea. And I was able to share my ideas with my angel investor, Deborah Watkins, who's the person responsible for bringing me out to California over the course of, um, gosh, at least 8 years, coming out to California monthly. And Deborah is a consummate fundraiser. She knows how to shake money from the pockets of well-heeled funders who live and work in Silicon Valley. And I shared my ideas with Deborah Watkins, and she then um, told me to write up a proposal of what I could do. And that proposal was the John Henry Clarke Enhanced History Project, thinking of Dr. Clarke, thinking about Dr. Clarke's dedication to documenting African history. And I felt what was needed was to tap into the spirit of Dr. Clarke and to enhance the history of Africans in America. So I think I did a one-page proposal. I gave it to Deborah, and she then passed it on to the president of the Hewlett Foundation. And after a series of conversations and a few modifications, we finally received funding for the project in January of 2019. So with the funding in hand, I began to work seriously on designing the project, what I wanted the project to look like, the impact that I wanted the project to have on the people who saw it, on the people who walked through it. So, those of you all who know me know that, I've made a career the last 4 decades as a writer, as a public speaker, as a historian, as a chematologist, but I have no formal training in any of those arenas. I am, by training, an artist, more specifically, a designer, a graphic designer. I'm a person who has an abiding love and appreciation for architecture. Growing up in Chicago, I took 2 years of architectural courses in high school, and my freshman year in college at the University of Illinois, I actually majored in architecture before I transferred to Howard and changed my major to design. So I'm basically an artist at heart, and it's that creative aspect of my being that allows me to be flexible, that allows my creativity to come out. And that is what has made my endeavors in the historical arena so different than classically trained historians. I'm not a trained historian. I'm an artist um, who uses art to write about history or to talk about history, who uses graphic design skills and marketing skills to make history more palatable. And that is how I do what I do. And so I brought these skills to my creation of the John Henry Clarke Enhanced History Project. So I began working on design ideals, and then I reached out to Free Benjamin, who is my creative partner. I've been working with Free since 2005 when she designed the initial displays for the first IKG Cultural Resource Center, which was in Northeast Washington, D.C. in 2005. And I found Free to be a very creative artist, much more talented in the art field than I am. I never really learned how to do computer design. I was always a hands-on person. I was doing my design work in the 1970s, primarily before the advent of computers. So I never learned Photoshop per se, or InDesign, or any of the programs that skillful designers such as Free is masterful at. But we began working in 2019 on the mural that was to be the cornerstone of the John Henry Clarke project. It was a mural, it was a graphic image that was to represent 8,000 years of African excellence and success, because my motivation for the John Henry Clarke Enhanced History Project was to tell the story of African people before our world was turned upside down during the Ma'afa. Tell the story of 8,000 years of African success and excellence. So that story begins in Africa. It begins specifically in the Nile Valley, and it documents our migration from the Nile to the Niger to the Potomac. And so we started working on this project in earnest in January of 2019. And it was my hope, it was my desire that Sister Free would be able to join us this evening so we could talk about this creative process. But she had a last minute emergency come up, and I don't think she'll be able to join me. But we'll have another occasion to talk about this work. As a matter of fact, if all goes well, Sister Free will be a guest on my radio show in WPFW on 2 weeks from today, on Wednesday, April the 2nd, where we'll talk about the formal opening of the Clarke Enhanced History Project. So as we began to seriously become involved in this work, as with any new undertaking, we always encounter setbacks. And so the first major setback came in March of 2020, when COVID struck. And the Thurgood Marshall Center, which is where the Clarke Project is going to be permanently displayed, the Thurgood Marshall Center was closed for over a year. So we weren't able to move forward with the project as we had planned, but we continued to work on other aspects of the project. I was, I had COVID. I had COVID before it was known as COVID, and had been dealing with what I thought was long COVID for a couple of years before I found out otherwise. But as Free and I began, I continued working on the Africa Eyes mural, the mural that depicted 8,000 years of African excellence and success. We formally unveiled that mural on June the 11th, 2022. It's a 25-foot long mural that served as the cornerstone for all of the art displays that were going to be a part of the John Henry Clarke Project. So it was going to be the cornerstone, if you will, the foundation of the Clarke Project. We unveiled that on June of 2022, and then 5 months after the unveiling, I had a heart attack, right? That just kind of came out of nowhere. And 3 months into the heart attack in March, actually, gosh, 3 years ago this month, I went to see my cardiologist, and he told me that, Mr. Browder, the medications that we have you on for your heart condition, congestive heart failure with low ejection fraction, those medications are not working. So, Mr. Browder, we want you to seriously consider getting a heart transplant. And as he echoed those words, my mind said, nope, not going to happen. And I could hear my mother in the back of my mind tell me to ask my doctor, ask my cardiologist, what was the remote possibility that I might have picked up a bug, a bacteria infection, or virus digging in 2,700-year-old tomb. So I listened to my mother because her spirit has always guided me. And I posed that question to my doctor. My doctor said that, he hadn't considered that. He hadn't considered how my occupation might have impacted my health. So he referred me to an infectious disease specialist. She did some blood work, and in April of 2023, um, she came back with a diagnosis of brucellosis myocarditis. In other words, I had inflammation of my heart muscle that was due to a bacterial infection that I had picked up in Egypt. Infection was called brucella. And one of the reasons why the doctors didn't diagnose that is because nobody in this area has ever had this infection before. It's a disease that runs rampant in Egypt. And according to what my cardiologist told me, that there have only been 4 documented cases of people having this infection in their heart muscle. There were 2 Afghani sheep herders and a Greek farmer who contracted this disease, and I was the 4th person. So nobody in the District of Columbia, no physician in the District of Columbia had ever encountered anybody with brucellosis. So the solution for the bacterial infection was simple. I was on 6 weeks of amoxicillin, which killed the bacteria and helped to alleviate the problem. But as my cardiologist informed me, I was left with a chronic condition that was caused by the bacteria infection, which resulted in congestive heart failure with low ejection fraction. So we had a solution to the problem, and it was simply a matter of me mapping out a path to resolve the problem within my body and to help myself heal. And believe me, folk, I'm gonna write a book about this experience because I've only been hospitalized 3 times in my life. And in each time I was hospitalized, it came at 17-year intervals. And at each 17-year interval, it represented a time when I needed to make a shift in my life, a shift in the work that I was doing, but I was too hard-headed, to use my grandmother's term. I was too hard-headed. I was too determined to make something work that was not supposed to work anymore. And so in this particular instance, in 2022, it was time for me to end the ACER Restoration Project. It was time for me to turn the page and redirect my attention on where it was going to be needed right here at home. So I was able to get on the other side of my health challenge. I'm doing much better. And one of the things that I noticed as my health began to improve, my creativity was restored. What do I mean by that? Anyone who's an artist, anyone who's a creative person would tell you that your ideas don't come to you, they come through you. These ideas exist in a nebulous realm of reality, which we call nothing. But from a creative sense, nothing is not nothing in the traditional sense of the word. It's the source of everything. And when you're in a creative mode, you go into this realm of nothingness and you create things. And those things that you create within this realm, this nebulous realm, you then have the capacity to recreate here in the physical world. At least that's how I've been able to work. Everything that I've done with my writing, with all of the projects that I've been involved in, it's been done through this process. So I'm giving you all a inkling into the creative workings of Tony Browder, and this is how I do what I've done. So during the time when I was ill, I thought I was dealing with the effects of long COVID, but what I was actually dealing with were the effects of this bacterial infection, which I had picked up in Egypt, probably around 2019 or early 2020. And it's a slow growing bacterial infection, I was informed, that could take up to a year before it begins to manifest within your body. So during that time frame, it was like I had long COVID. It was like I was in a COVID fog. My mind wasn't clear. I couldn't see. I couldn't visualize the way that I have been doing for most of my creative life, and it was difficult for me um, to devote my time and energy on the Clarke project. I just couldn't see what it was that I wanted to do, and so what I now realize, now that I'm on the other side of that and the information is coming, the creativity started flowing. I mean, the ideas just started, literally just started downloading ideas. And as I got into gear, I was able to sketch out ideas, pass those sketches to Free. She was able to take those sketches and to bring them to life. And so we began to move forward with the plans of opening um, the project, the Clarke project, several months prior to its April opening. But then we encountered some more delays, and I would get frustrated. Deborah got frustrated because she wanted to let the folk at Hewlett Packard know that we had finally finished everything with the project and wanted some of them to come to DC to see it. But something kept delaying the opening of the process of the project. And what I now realize is that I didn't have any control over when this project was going to open. I realized that the project was supposed to open when it was actually time for it to open. And what I now know beyond a shadow of a doubt, that now is the right time for the opening of the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project. This project is opening at the very time, with the very reason for its creation, as we now are witnessing the erasure of Black history, African American history in federal offices throughout the land by the current occupant of the White House. I'm talking about none other than 92 and his Nazi crew. Their efforts to make America great again is to make America hate again by putting white men in charge of the narrative and erasing the contribution of people of color, of women. I understand that they've taken down references to the Iwo Jima Memorial. They've taken down references to the Buffalo Soldiers. They've taken down references in the Pentagon, references to the Tuskegee Airmen. And I just saw an article today, they have removed references to Jackie Robinson and his career in the military. So we are witnessing right now in real time the erasure of the African contributions to American history and culture. And so the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project is supposed to be released at this specific point in time in history in order to help us realize that we must assume personal responsibility for digging up our own history. We must document what we've uncovered, and we must present our discoveries to everyone in our community. We can't rely on agents of the federal government to tell our story, because we know now that they're not going to do it. They're not properly motivated to do it. So we should educate our children. We should educate everybody in our community. And damn it, if we can't do it in our schools, if they are going to dismantle the departments of education, so be it. Turn your home into an educational facility. Turn your barbershop, your beauty shop, your churches, your Masonic temples into an educational facility. And we have to do what was done during times of segregation. We assume responsibility for educating ourselves, for freeing our minds, and freeing every Black life, every Black life that matters to us. And I had to pause when I said freeing every Black life, because last week, the federal government forced Mayor Bowser to eradicate the Black Lives Matter sign that was at Black Lives Matter Plaza at 16th Street and L'Enfant Plaza. That's gone. That's history now, right? And if we don't remember it, if you don't have pictures of that, then you won't see it in future American history books if these Nazis in the White House have their way. So this is where we are, folks. And I've said it before, and I'll say it until I die. The time for sitting on the fence is over. The time for wondering whether or not you should be involved in helping to preserve and protect our history is over. If you got to think about it, then I really don't need to be around you. I really don't need to build with you. I'm interested in building with people who are capable of building, who understand what time it is, and are willing to devote the rest of their lives to fighting this fight and to ensure that we become victorious. So the John Henry Clarke, with the John Henry Clarke um, Enhanced History Project, we have created a sacred space where ancestors are acknowledged, where knowledge is valued, and where knowledge can flow like gold washed down from the mountain. And that statement, knowledge can flow like gold washed down from the mountains, is a quote from Carter G. Woodson. It's carved on the back of the Carter G. Woodson's statue on 11th and Rhode Island Avenue Northwest, right around the corner from the Carter G. Woodson home. I pray that that statue is not taken down since it sits on, I don't know if that's federal land or city land, but don't be surprised if elements within the society want to erase all of the monuments, all of the memorials that honor our struggle. So our successful struggle, our beautiful struggle, as Ta-Nehisi Coates would say. And we have to assume total responsibility for documenting who we are based on our knowledge of who we were, and to leave this legacy for the benefit of all of those who are coming behind us. So at this point in time, I want to do what I typically do best, and that is to share some visuals, to share a brief PowerPoint, to share some images that are part of the Clarke Enhanced History Project, to give you a taste of what you will be able to see on the 5th of April when the project formally opens on the second floor of the Thurgood Marshall Center located at 1816 12th Street Northwest. That location has been the home of IKG for the past, 18, 19 years now. We've been, fortunate to work with the management there who appreciate what we're doing and have given us a permanent home for the Clarke Enhanced History Project. And it's our goal, it's our desire that that could be a space where people will come to enhance their understanding of the history of African people before they go to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, so that they will have context, right? And once you have context, then everything else flows naturally. All the pieces fit together, and we then are in a better position to know what we're supposed to know and to do the things that we've come here on earth to do. So I will now seek to share my screen and begin the PowerPoint, and hopefully everything will work well. Share my screen, share PowerPoint, hit PowerPoint, and at the beginning, and jump into it. So there, you see here the north entrance to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. This is the Constitution Avenue entrance of the museum. You see the corona, this three-tiered bronze-colored inverted pyramids that resemble a crown, hence the title, the corona, which sits on top of a glass box, which represents the first floor level of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. This structure is an architectural masterpiece. I really love it. I love the thought that the African and African American architects put into the creation of this incredible edifice. And the object that you see on ground level is an oculus. And I'm going to speak a bit more about the oculus and its historical and cultural significance a little bit later on in my presentation. But let's move forward with the presentation. Dr. Clarke said that if you begin your history with slavery, then everything since then looks like progress. So it's critically important that the John Henry Clarke takes you on a journey thousands of years before our enslavement, when African men and women were the masters of their destiny, when they were the only human beings on the planet, and laid down the foundation for humanity, culture, and civilization. That is our story. That is the truth that we must assume responsibility for telling and sharing with the world. So let's hear from Dr. Clarke himself talk about why history is important.
Is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been, what they have been, where they are, and what they are. Most important, history tells a people where they still must go, what they still must be.
That quote is from the opening of the Wesley Snipes produced documentary, John Henry Clarke, A Great and Mighty Walk. It was a documentary that was released in 1997, the year before Dr. Clarke passed. Atlantis and I actually traveled up to Harlem for the premiere of that documentary, and it was an awe-inspiring event. I'm telling you, really great event, and inspired me to no end. And is one of the reasons why this project is named in honor of Dr. Clarke. He is one of my favorite scholars. He is a person that I had the honor and the privilege to know personally, someone that I viewed as a teacher, as a colleague, and as a friend. So his passing has afforded me the opportunity to honor him as an ancestor by naming something after him that will ensure that he will live forever as people continue to speak the words of Clarke Enhanced History Project. It documents the greatest migration of African people, and that is the migration of Africans from the Nile to the Niger, to the Potomac, and beyond. And I also want to give a nod to my dear friend, my dear colleague, Dr. Joyce King, who is on watching this. And it was Joyce who coined the phrase from the Nile to the Niger to the Mississippi, I believe. And that just speaks to the essence of who we are. It speaks to the essence of our journey. And it speaks to the importance of us documenting our journey and having the courage to tell our story. So as we continue, there are many memes by Dr. Clarke on the internet. There are many videos and video clips of Dr. Clarke. They all afford people the opportunity to get to know something about this great man. But here's a quote from Dr. Clarke that is one of my favorites. Dr. Clarke was an advertising executive's dream because he spoke with perfect sound bites. He gives you these nuggets of wisdom, these nuggets of history that serves to inspire you on multiple levels simultaneously. Dr. Clarke said, powerful people cannot afford to educate the people that they oppress. Think about that in real time. Think about that in the context of what's happening right now with the erasure of African history. Because powerful people understand that once you are truly educated, you will not ask for power, you will take it. So it's not about begging someone to give you reparations. No, it's about realizing that you're responsible for restoring what they took away. And once you restore what they've taken away, you don't have to beg them to give you money. You withhold your money and continue to withhold your money until they acquiesce to your demands and give you what you know you are deserved. So that's how you take power back, by knowing that the power is always in your hands, not in the hands of your oppressor. So these are messages that Dr. Clarke literally spent his life teaching us And these are messages that are sorely needed at this particular point in time in history. Dr. Clarke was inspired by the writings of Arthur Schomburg. And for those of you all who heard my show on WPFW, the Browder File show, I interviewed my good friend Paul Coates. And Paul is having a program this Sunday where he's featuring an interview with the author of a book on Alain Locke. And March the 1st, 2025 marks the 100-year anniversary of the publication of a book called Survey Graphic. There's a copy of the book here, which was the first publication that was printed by Paul Coates of Black Classic Press. It was the first Black classic that he brought back into the public's viewing. This publication was produced 100 years ago this month, and it was an edition, a special edition on the New Negro. The actual title is Harlem, the Mecca of the New Negro. And it was Alain Locke who edited this publication. And several months after the release of this edition, Alain Locke went on to publish a book called The New Negro. And in that publication was an article, an essay, if you will, written by Arthur Schomburg. And that essay was titled, The Negro Digs Up His Past. And a young John Henry Clarke read that article when he was a teenager living in the rural South in Alabama or Georgia. I think it was Georgia. And that article inspired him because, like most Black people in the 1930s, we knew nothing about Black history. We were told the lie that our history began in slavery and that our people, Black people, Africans, had made no meaningful contribution to history, culture, literature, or the arts. And that was a lie that our oppressors had to maintain in order to keep us mentally and intellectually subservient to them. But Schomburg, in that article, talked about the importance of the American Negro, which is what we would call back in those days. We must become the most enthusiastic antiquarian of them all. We must become the most encouraging historians. We must become involved in digging up our past, whether we do it figuratively or literally. We've got to dig up the past. We've got to tell our story, document our stories, and then make them available to every Black life that matters to us. So Clarke was so inspired by reading that article by Schomburg that he, as an 18-year-old, jumped on a freight train and made his way to Harlem, where he met Schomburg, and Schomburg taught a young, impressionable 18-year-old John Henry Clarke how to study the history of his oppressor, how to study African history, how to study world history, and how to synthesize all of these studies so that he can have a comprehensive understanding of the world and who he was within this world and what it is he must do in order to carve out his rightful place in the world. So Clarke spent the rest of his life doing that and inspiring tens of thousands of people in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and all around the world. Dr. Clarke was an advisor to Kwame Nkrumah. When Nkrumah was a student at Lincoln University, he would come up to Harlem and spend his weekends where he encountered Clarke and John Jackson and a host of other movers and shakers in Harlem. And when Kwame Nkrumah became president of Ghana, Clarke went to Ghana to see this event, and he tells the story in the Wesley Snipes produced film, John Henry Clarke, A Great and Mighty Walk. He was standing along the parade route as Nkrumah's car was driving past. And Nkrumah looked over and saw John Clarke, stopped the vehicle, and asked him what he was doing in his country. and told him to come to his office on Monday and he would have a job for him. And Dr. Clarke's job was to make sure that the history of Ghana was documented and taught properly. So he had such an impact on people who would have an impact on people all around the world. One such person was Malcolm X. And I found out rather late after Dr. Clarke had passed that Dr. Clarke was an advisor to Malcolm after he left the Nation of Islam. Dr. Clarke met with Malcolm in the basement of his brownstone in Harlem, where they wrote the charter for the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Dr. Clarke, I also understood was responsible for putting together, compiling the papers and the talking points for Malcolm whenever he was going on the radio or was going to do a television interview and talk about African affairs. It was Dr. Clarke, with his knowledge of Africa, that compiled this information and presented this information to Malcolm. And Clarke, I think in the documentary, was always impressed with Malcolm's ability to synthesize this information and to present it seamlessly. So to be able to know the man who influenced the minds that influenced millions was a distinct honor of mine. Dr. Clarke was the founding president of the African Heritage Studies Association, and an organization which he founded and was the first president. And this organization broke away from the African Heritage Studies Association, which was a white-led organization, which refused to tell the story of African people correctly, which refused to make a space for African scholars. So Dr. Clarke led a boycott, a walkout of their national meeting. I think it was an international meeting in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, and formed his own organization. And ultimately, these two organizations came to Addis Ababa for a international conference on African historians. And only one of these two organizations would be allowed a meeting with then President Haile Selassie, and it was Dr. Clarke who led his delegation to that meeting. So Dr. Clarke's history is so rich, man. It's so vibrant. And it's an honor for me to pay homage to the spirit of this man by naming this project in his memory. Dr. Clarke was also one of the founding members of ASCAC, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization. One of the proudest moments in my life was in 1992 when Dr. Clarke wrote the introduction to Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. And there's a story that I'll share later, maybe during the question and answer, about the evening that Dr. Clarke gave me the introduction. We had hosted him at an event here in DC, and he blessed me with a copy of the introduction, which humbled me to no end. So this is a man who still means the world to me, and to honor him is my obligation to make sure that his name is never forgotten. So the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project is a retrospective of African history, African American history, and provides a context for the enslavement of Africans in America. It documents the historical accomplishments of people of African ancestry thousands of years before our enslavement. And the primary goal of this project is to correct distorted perceptions of African and African American history, and to tell the story of African migration from the Nile to the Niger to the Potomac. And so it consists of 12 displays which document little known aspects of African and African American and US history, and is part of an upgrade of the displays that are a part of the Egypt on the Potomac field trip. So we've been able to merge this historical information together seamlessly, such that it presents a powerful telling of the presence of Africans in America prior to our enslavement and since our enslavement, to help young African Americans specifically understand who we are and what we've always had the capacity to do. I'm going to share with you now a couple of graphics that Sister Free, skillfully produced that are part of this display. One of them is one that lists essential readings for citizens of the 21st century. You cannot consider yourself a person prepared to play an active role in the liberation of Black minds if you have not read these 10 books and some of the other books that will be referenced throughout this exhibit. Of course, we start with John Henry Clarke, A.C. Hilliard, Drusilla Dungy Houston, George G.M. James, John Jackson, Carter G. Woodson, Chancellor Williams, Francis Bess Welsing, Ivan Van Sertima, and Dr. Ben. These are all classics. It should be studied and not just read. And then Free came up with a suggestion that since we were talking about books, that we have a photograph of a bookcase. So, she motivated me to go downstairs and take some pictures of my bookcase, sent her the pictures, and she just wove all of these images together to create a powerful graphic narrative that tells a story on multiple levels simultaneously. And for those of you who will come to see this exhibit, you'll walk away transformed. I mean, that is our mission, that's our objective, and it will be up to you to tell us how good a job we did. What will be one of my favorite images, and hopefully one of your images, is this graphic that is, I think this particular piece is about 9 feet long, 5 feet high and 9 feet long. It covers an entire wall, and it highlights milestones in African history. And what I wanted to do with this piece is to showcase several things. One, to showcase mitochondria Eve, that is, to document the fact that is known by geneticists that every human being on this planet is of African genetic origin. That mitochondria Eve is real. African mitochondrial DNA is the oldest DNA of human beings on the planet, and that every person on this planet carries within their bodies the mitochondrial DNA, mitochondrial cells from the first female who ever walked the planet. That is an African woman who lived in Northeast Africa. And so what we've done is create a visual timeline that documents milestones in African history, beginning 300,000 years ago when Africans were the only human beings on the planet. And one of the things that I've done to ensure the accuracy of this information was to consult multiple sources. And some of the primary sources for this particular display come from the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in the David Koch Hall of Human Origin. This exhibition is, I think it was a $15 million exhibit that tells the story of human origins. It was paid for by David Koch of the Koch brothers. Yeah, that David Koch. Yes, those Koch brothers. And it speaks to the fact that even a broken clock is right twice a day, and that sometimes some people get things right. And we have to acknowledge those things that are correct. What we've done is to update some of the data in this exhibit, which again is about 20 years old. So in the exhibit, which is on the first floor of the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, which is 2 blocks east of the Smithsonian Museum of African American History, they state that 200,000 years ago, Africans were the only humans on the planet. So new data has come out since then that has pushed the African presence on planet Earth back 100,000 years. And believe me, folk, that's still a modest date. More than likely over the course of the next decade or 2 or 3, new skeletal remains will be found where that date may be pushed back another 100,000 years or 200,000 years. But this is the current information that's available to us now. That exhibit also goes on to say that 65,000 years ago, Africans began populating Asia, and that 45,000 years ago, Africans began populating Western Asia, or the landmass that we now call Europe. So with these 3 pieces of very critical historical evidence, we can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that Africans were the first human beings on the planet, that Africans were the first human beings in Asia, and Africans were the first human beings in Europe. This is all proven scientifically beyond a shadow of a doubt. This is not Black history, folks. This is world history. This is African history. And this is a historical narrative that everyone needs to know about. Those who come to the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project will see this. We'll give them the documentation. We'll make sources available to teachers, to students, to anyone who is interested in expanding their knowledge, their awareness of who we are as human beings living on this planet. One other interesting note that I like to point out is that all of these displays, and there is a total of 16 displays. We have a pillar which has four displays on 4 different sides, so it's a total of 16 displays, and each of these displays will have a QR code. That QR code will allow you to access via your smartphone a short video clip. And these video clips will provide additional information. So what we're doing with the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project is providing layers and layers of information. We have graphic information. We have text to accompany the graphics. And then we have a video that will provide additional information. Ultimately, as we continue expanding this project, we will produce a publication that will lay out all of the graphics and provide more historical detail about what is in each of these graphics. And ultimately, my daughter and I will develop a curriculum that will lay out a course of study for teaching this information within a classroom, within a household, within your fraternity, within your sorority, within your Masonic temple, in your barbershop, your beauty shop, wherever Black folk congregate is a sacred space where we must come together to tell our story, and we'll be providing you with the tools to do so. So also I'm introducing a concept that I had come up with maybe a decade or so ago. Everyone talks about Sankofa, but it's important to go beyond Sankofa, to go from Sankofa to Kofa. Sankofa means to go back, to look back, to study your history, to preserve your ideas, and to pass it on. But you can't just spend your life reflecting on the past. You have to be able to now reflect on the past in the present moment, and then use those reflections to build something for the future. So we go from Sankofa to Kofa. So Kofa is to create your future by applying and expanding upon the historical information that you've studied. So you don't just come together to talk about what you've read, talk about how bad Black people were. If you're suffering today, if you're in poverty today, it means that you're not doing something right. You're not tapping into that ancestral intelligence that I've been talking about the last couple of years. You're not tapping into the most powerful form of communication that's always been accessible to us. Ancestral intelligence is the key to our capacity to survive the Ma'afa, to survive Jim Crow, segregation, and the current attempts to erase us. We've got to use all the resources that we have available to us in order to ensure our proper place in a world that's rapidly changing. What I want to share with you with the next couple of slides is how Free worked, how our relationship evolved over the years in working on this project. I would come up with a sketch, an idea for a piece of art, and I would give that idea to Free, and she would expand it, improve upon it. So at the top, you see the sketch for the Egypt on the Potomac displays, and at the bottom, you see a 18-foot-long mural that spans an entire wall that vividly illustrates highlights of the Egypt on the Potomac field trip of Washington, D.C. So there is a wonderful convergence of history, of knowledge and information. So those who come to take the field trip this season, and the season begins on April the 5th, you'll see a brand new field trip. You got some new information. We've got all new displays that will enhance this experience for you, for your children and everyone who's involved in this process. Here's another example. This is another piece that will be one of our favorites, and what we're thinking about doing is making posters of some of these images. This is my sketch for the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We drive past that building on the field trip, and so there's information, important symbolic information about the architecture of this building that we have integrated into our Egypt on the Potomac field trip. This is my sketch, and this is how Free brought that sketch to life. Powerful image, a beautiful image that highlights specific symbolic elements that have been encoded, skillfully encoded into the architecture of this building. So you all will get a chance to see it. When you come to the facility, you'll see the symbolism, and you realize how these African and African-American architects very skillfully use the resources available to them to tell a story within a story. And that story that they've told in this building is a story of the migration of African people from the Nile to the Niger to the Potomac. It's all there. And, you know, I just can't share with you how excited I am to complete this project and to see this wonderful convergence of concepts and ideas that tell a narrative that has been told and retold over and over again. And it's our job, it's our responsibility to ensure that future generations will be privy to this knowledge, so there will never be any doubt as to who they are and what they have the capacity to do. So moving forward, this is the sketch for the main work of art, the Africa Eyes mural, which is a 25-foot-long mural that wraps around 3 walls on the 2nd floor of the Thurgood Marshall Center. It evolved over time from this sketch to this rough visual image that I created for Free, and then this is what she ultimately came up with. A beautiful illustration that documents the migration of African people from the Nile on the left to the Niger in the center to the Potomac on the right. And in the center of this image is the Olmec head. Because if we truly understand the works of Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and it was Van Sertima 48 years ago last month on February the 21st, 1977, that I heard Van Sertima talk about his book, They Came Before Columbus, where he talked about the fact that the ancient Egyptians were Black. That was the first time in my life anyone ever told me that the ancient Egyptians were Black. And he showed these images of the Olmec heads and said that these images were images of Africans from the 25th dynasty. The 25th dynasty, the era of the tombs that we've been excavating for 15 years, that they were responsible for building ships, navigating the Nile River, the Mediterranean Sea, the Atlantic Ocean, and had numerous interactions with indigenous people in the landmass that we today call Mexico. They shared their technology, right? So it's a wonderful convergence of histories and cultures and peoples. And it's a story which we have to tell because others will resist these historical truths. So as we move forward, one of the things that we'll be sharing with you at the Clarke Enhanced History Project is a 23-minute video that documents the African Eyes mural. It was a video that was the winner last year of 3 Telly Awards. Telly Awards are awards that are given for television and video productions that amplify the teachings of history and culture and things of that nature. So I work with a producer and videographer here in the area who created this video, 23-minute video of me talking about the Clarke Project, and he submitted it to the Telly Committee, and I was surprised. I was shocked to find that we won 3 Tellys, so we'll be talking more about that with the creation of the Clarke Project and the videos associated with it. So we've got so much information to share with you. And again, what the Clarke Project represents is the domestic application of the Asa Restoration Project. I had mentioned, I think in the last September Wisdom Wednesday, I talked about the conclusion of the Asa Restoration Project, but that ending is just a new beginning. We were going to be bringing our talents and the knowledge that we've accumulated over the past 15 years back home. We've got books to write. We've got presentations to do. We've got information to share that will expand our understanding of who we were and what we've done. And I also am going to be sharing with you more information about the documented migration of Africans from the Nile to the Niger. That's a whole new area of investigation that hopefully I can inspire hundreds, if not thousands, of scholars to advance this research and to expand upon this narrative and uncover or dig up the history that's waiting to be dug up and shared with others. And let's see, next image is a video presentation, a short video presentation.
Our ancestors knew not. They studied. For 4,000 years, they learned all there was to know, and they taught others. For 1,000 years, they spread their wisdom from the Nile to the Niger. Then came the Ma'afa, the great disaster. Enslavers made it illegal for Africans to read and write. They were forced to forget all they had learned and taught. They built America from the Hudson to the Potomac, the Mississippi, and beyond. After 400 years of forgetting, they forgot they had forgotten. That changes today. I will remember for them. I will read for them. I will write for them. I will speak for them and teach for them. I will make certain they're never forgotten again, for I am the vessel through which my ancestors live, breathe, and do their best work.
So for those of you who are familiar with my work, you know that that poem that I narrated was a modified version of the poem in my first book from the Browder file. It was called Transition 13. And I modified that for the students that I was working with in California. And we turned that into a pledge, which the students recited at the beginning and the closure of every monthly session that I had with them. And I named this piece, this revised piece, Transition 14, the Aset Principle. So for those of you all who are familiar with the story of Aset, Aset was the wife of Asar. Aset was the person responsible for literally remembering the body of Asar. So we're at a phase in our struggle where we have to call upon, we have to activate the Aset principle. We have to remember those stories, those histories that were illegal, that were forgotten, and make sure that those stories are preserved and passed down to future generations. And what you see on this image here of the National Museum of African American History and Culture is what I understand this building to truly be. This is more than just a museum. This building is a repository of artifacts that belong to formerly enslaved Africans, African and African Americans who struggled for freedom in this country, Africans who are now ancestors. And we know that an object that was worn by a person, carried by a person, contains their spirit. And that the energy of that spirit, the energy of that person lives in that object. And so the true shape of the corona of the National Museum of African American History and Culture is modeled after a Yoruba caryatid, that is a Yoruba shrine post, which had 3 inverted pyramids atop the head of a priest. And it represents the descent of spirit, ancestral spirit, into the consciousness of that priest whose responsibility it was to share it with everyone within the village, everyone within the community. So in that context, this building is more than a museum, it's a shrine house. And if you enter this shrine house with the right consciousness, you will be able to access the consciousness, the spirit of those ancestors inside. That's why understanding the power, the value, the reality of ancestral intelligence is key to us unlocking the keys to our ability to not only survive the onslaught that others have planned for us, but to be able to endure and thrive and build Black better, build America better. So all of these ancestors you see here rising out of the National Museum of African American History and Culture represent the potential that is waiting for each and every person who enters this shrine house with the right consciousness. And the music underneath my narrative was music by our beloved Brother Ah, who you see depicted on the extreme right of this mural. And Brother Ah was the first Black trumpeter to play for the New York Symphony, a very talented musician and composer who grew up in New York, played for the New York Symphony, told stories of the racism that he was subjected to simply because he was a talented Black musician. But also played with Miles Davis. He played with John Coltrane. He played with some of the jazz greats. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful soul. So it was fitting that we add him to this mural so that he can perform the role of Gabriel and call all of God's children to rise on up and empower those of us who need their spirit and need their energy. So there's so much in this artwork. There's so much in these displays that is so multi-layered. You have to see it. You have to sit with it. You have to open up your heart and your mind to receive all the messages that are to be gained from this exhibit. So it formally opens on April the 5th. It's free and open to the public. The Thurgood Marshall Center is open 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It's open from 9 to 3 on Saturdays. And so we're going to encourage folk to come to Washington, D.C. IKG will continue to have events, conferences. Next Wednesday on my show on WPFW, my guest will be Carl Nelson of WOL. Carl has interviewed me probably over 50, 60 times on WOL. So I want to have an opportunity to interview him to showcase the fact that these radio stations are not in competition. We're all striving to raise the consciousness of our listeners so that we can move forward into a future that we design and be more productive. So Carl will hopefully share on on WPFW next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Big news for a big event coming to the Thurgood Marshall Center in June of this year. So stay tuned and be turned on, folks. So winding down, I want to close by reminding you all that tomorrow is the spring equinox. And for those of you all who live in Washington, D.C., should know that the sun rises down Maryland Avenue on this day. It shines down, sun rises on Maryland Avenue. I can't see the graphic because of the screen here. Let me just move some of this stuff out the way. Sun rises down Maryland Avenue on the summer solstice. It rises down Pennsylvania Avenue on the winter solstice, and it rises down Eastern Avenue on the spring and fall equinox. So for those of you who live in the DMV, tomorrow morning at sunrise, I encourage you to look down Eastern Avenue, and you will see that Benjamin Banneker did his job in laying out the capital of the wealthiest, most powerful nation in human history. He oriented this 10-mile square such that it would be oriented to Pacific rising and transitings and settings of the sun. So tomorrow is the day we have 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours at nighttime. And this is the season of light and enlightenment. So I invite you all to come to see the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project. come to see it on April the 5th when we begin our Egypt on the Potomac field trip season. You'll have an opportunity to see it if you come on the field trip. If you don't come on the field trip, we're going to do a special event. I think the time frame will be 1 o'clock on the 5th. Just stay tuned. We'll be making some information available to our IKG listeners and supporters and let you know when we will have the official grand opening of the John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project. We invite you to come out and participate in this grand event. So with that, I will close and say that we have committed ourselves. We here at IKG have committed ourselves to restoring the historical and cultural memories of people of African descent. John Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project is the latest effort on our part to restore our historical and cultural memory so that we can become once again the people that we have always been. I thank you for your time and your attention. Sister Adjua, I will stop the screen share and I will bring you in so that we can do the Q&A and move on with our day.
All right. Again, thank you for that wonderful presentation. For those who are asking, this video and all previous Wisdom Wednesdays can be found on the IKG YouTube page. And I will post a link of that page in the chat in a moment. But also in the chat, you will find links to IKG's page to purchase tickets for the Egypt on the Potomac field trip. And you will also find a link to the Wisdom Wednesdays for 2025 where you can register in advance. The first question, you're speaking of the Dr. Clarke project. When can the public visit that event? Sister Kim would like to know, after the soft launch, when can others visit?
The formal opening will be on the 5th of April. That's when we'll have more things in place. We're putting the finishing touches on everything now. We had the team come in last Friday to install the graphics, and the graphics are wall murals that are affixed to the walls of the Thurgood Marshall Center. So we've got a few things we need to touch up, and I'll be working with my videographer, Brother Cody Valentine, over the course of the next few weeks to produce all of the videos that will accompany the QR codes. So those won't be ready until May the 2nd, I think, will be our May field trip. May the 3rd. So our May 3rd field trip will have all the components in place. There's a lot of moving pieces to this, brothers and sisters. So it's taking us a while to assemble all the pieces, and I'd rather roll it out incrementally than wait until everything is done, because this information is needed now. And so I saw someone ask, which subway stop is the Thurgood Marshall Center near? It's the Green Line. It's right near 13th Street and Vermont Avenue. We're right near the African American Civil War Memorial, right around the corner from Ben's Chili Bowl. So we're in the heart of a historic U Street in the Shaw community in Northwest Washington, D.C. We'll go to the next question, please.
All right. The next question, is there a biography written on the life and legacy of Dr. John Henrik Clarke? If
Oh,
so,
yeah.
who was the biographer and what is the title?
Do I have it? I don't know if I have a copy behind me, but there are several biographies by Dr. Clarke. One was written by his secretary. There is a biography that was done by the members of the African Heritage Studies Association. And so you'll find several, but what I would encourage you all to watch is the documentary that Wesley Snipes produced in 1997. It's available on YouTube. It's free. It's John Henrik Clarke, A Great and Mighty Walk. John Henry Clarke, A Great and Mighty Walk. And I would love it. I would appreciate it if someone can go YouTube and put that URL in the chat so everyone will have access to it. Watch it this evening. You know, what's interesting is, you know, Dr. Clarke and Dr. Ben both lived in Harlem. And they were the cornerstone, or the two towers of power, as Dr. Jeffries referred to them. Dr. Jeffries and James Smalls referred to them as the twin towers of power. And there was a church that had Saturday programs called, gosh, I'm blanking on the name now. It will come to me. But it was the First World, and they had talks every Saturday. And Wesley Snipes and Lawrence Fishburne, who grew up in Harlem, cut their teeth on these lectures. So they heard Dr. Clarke and Dr. Ben and A.C. Hilliard and Van Sertima and other scholars on a weekly basis. And so a young Wesley Snipes knew that he was going to be an actor. He made a commitment, and James Small shared this story with me. Wesley Snipes knew that he was going to be an actor, and he understood the business. And he said that when he signed his First World Alliance, thank you, Kwabena. First World Alliance is the name of the organization, sponsored lectures, Saturday lectures up in Harlem. And Wesley said that when he signed his 7-picture deal, he was going to create a production company called Amin Ra Film. And he was going to produce documentaries about our scholars. He was going to produce films about people who white historians would not make films about. And so the very first film he did was on John Henry Clarke. And around 2000, he was working on doing a documentary for Dr. Ben, and hired me to go to Egypt for 3 weeks with the film crew to supervise the camera crew that was handling the B-roll footage. So we got to spend, 3 weeks in Egypt with Dr. Ben, working with the crew. And then after we shot the footage, we came back to the States, and they would bring me up to New York a couple of times a month to sit down with the editor as he was editing this footage and helping to explain to them what Dr. Ben was talking about, the history of Kemet, the mythology of Kemet. And we labored on this piece for 5, 6, 7 months until we just about got it done. And then Wesley ran into his tax problems and pulled the plug on everything. And that was the end of that endeavor. So, it's been 25 years and no one has picked up the slack. We've got all of these talented souls in Hollywood with the resources, but lack the consciousness to commit themselves to telling the stories that need to be told. And hopefully others can be inspired to pick up the mantle and tell the stories of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Pat Newton, Priscilla Dungy Houston, Anoka Rashidi, Ivan Van Sertima. There's so many stories that need to be told. And we have to prepare ourselves to prepare the souls to write those stories, to produce those films, see to it that there is an audience who will receive them. We can go on to the next question, please.
So along those lines of telling our story, I'm going to combine 2 questions. One from Laverne: when will the timeline in the presentation in the PowerPoint be for sale? And from Juriel: when are you releasing your next book? The timeline and your next book.
Okay, so we will have murals or posters of selected murals from Clarke exhibition available for purchase. The Africa Eyes mural has been available for 2 years. It's on the website. I'm in the process now of examining prints of other murals and determining what size we want to make them and when they'll be available. So I would just tell you to stay tuned. The video, the 23-minute award-winning video. I'm going to post that within the next couple of weeks. I just have to determine the best venue for me to post it. That will be available for viewing for free. We also will have all of the short QR code videos. Those will be available on either a website or YouTube channel for free because we want people to access this information. We want the Thurgood Marshall Center to be a destination for people when they come to Washington, D.C. And ideally, we would love for people to view Clarke exhibition before they go to the National Museum of African American History and Culture so that they will have context and truly be able to appreciate everything that is within that great institution. My next book is Browder File 3, Why Kemet Matters. I've been working on that for the last year or so, and by the end of this month, early next month, when all of the Clarke-related project is behind me, I can work seriously on finishing up Browder File 3, and it's my objective to have that book out by the end of June before I leave for my Why Kemet Matters tour of London and Paris, which will take place July the 17th through the 26th. So we've got plans to continue to tell our story and to make our story available in as many different media forums as possible. And the other reality that I'm pushing is that if I decide to stop going to Kemet because of some of the political concerns that I have in that country right now, that's okay. I've been to Kemet. Need to update the bio that you were reading from today, Adra. I've been to Egypt 68 times. And one of the things that I wanted to do is at least go 70 times before I took a serious break. But the point that I'm stressing with my forthcoming book, Why Kemet Matters, and my Why Kemet Matters tour of the British Museum and the Louvre is to show the fact that Kemet is everywhere. You don't have to go to Egypt to see Kemet. Kemet is in Washington, D.C. That's what we've been able to demonstrate with our Egypt on the Potomac field trip for almost 40 years. Think about that. Egypt on the Potomac is 39 years old. I had no idea when I conceived of this project back in 1986 that it would have this longevity. But again, by doing the research and providing the documentation, it stands on its own. And so the information is here. We just need to get it into as many hands and into as many minds as possible so that we can speak intelligently about who we were, so that we can articulate what our ancestors have done and what we have inherited. And we don't have to argue with anybody. This information, I don't want to see anybody arguing on YouTube or cursing people out on Instagram or Facebook. Let ignorance die, all right? You cannot argue with an ignorant person. You should not argue with an ignorant person. And to quote Mark Twain, when a fool and a wise person argue, it's hard to tell which is which. And you can't win arguing with a fool because they will beat you with experience. So, you know, Dr. Clarke said that he doesn't debate others. He only, what did he say? I only debate my equals. All others I teach. So be a good learner so that you can be a good teacher, and don't debate with fools. Next question, please.
Yes, the next question comes from Jeff. Jeff would like to know if the documentary on Baba Dr. Runoko Rashidi is in his life, is that documentary out and available?
Jeff, where have you been? That documentary is available on the IKG website. Been there for over a year. Go to the IKG website. You'll get all the details on how you can download a copy for your personal library. It's there, brother. We've tried to make it as simple as possible for people to access historically documented information. Thank you for the question.
All right. Now, within your presentation, Tony, you spoke about symbolism. Jasmine has a related question. Can you speak to the importance of the design of the astrology symbols on the floor and ceiling of the Library of Congress?
Astrology symbols on the floor and ceiling of the Library of Congress. Well, look, while many people will poo-poo astrology as a pseudoscience, those who know that the cosmos is the domain of Ma'at. Ma'at governs the known universe or the multiverse, as they have come to call it now. And that within the dominion of Ma'at, we also have a female figure known as Nut, who represents not just the sky, as many people mistakenly believe. Nut doesn't just represent the sky, she represents the Milky Way galaxy. She represents that aspect of the sky that dominates our specific corner of the universe. So those who study the heavens, those who study the movement of solar bodies, celestial bodies, understand that the placement of these objects in the sky has a corresponding effect on everything and everybody on the planet. So within certain buildings and structures, you'll find astronomical symbols, astrological symbols. As a matter of fact, if you ever go to the Vatican, in the center of St. Peter's Square, around the Tekken that is in the center of St. Peter's Square, there are brass medallions that are correlated to the astrological sign. And you'll see very clearly that the Tekken in the center of St. Peter's Square serves as a gnomon, that is a marker in a sundial whose shadow tells you the time of day, right? And so the Catholic Church professes to see astrology as a pseudoscience, as something that is sinful, but yet you'll find astrological symbols in the center of St. Peter's Square. You'll find them within the Vatican. So one of the ways of separating people from knowledge of self, knowledge that will transform their consciousness, is to tell them it's a pseudoscience, or to tell them it's evil, or it's wicked, or it's voodoo, or it's something that is disgraceful or demeaning. As Stevie Wonder said, when you believe in things that you don't understand, you suffer. When you don't know, a liar is a liar. When you believe liars, you will suffer. And one of the best tools to alleviate or minimize suffering is knowledge. Knowledge cancels out fear. To quote James Madison, fourth president of the United States, James Madison, whose name is on the third building of the Library of Congress, the Madison building of the Library of Congress. At the entrance to that building is a quote from Madison, the fourth president of the United States, Madison, who owned and enslaved Africans, Madison, who wrote the U.S. Constitution, says that knowledge will forever govern ignorance. And the people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power that knowledge gives. So knowledge is power, and you can never expect your oppressor to introduce you to the knowledge that will free you from their oppression. That is not going to happen. You can never expect your oppressor's religion to give you the tools to free you from the oppression. So if they didn't treat you right, if Christians don't treat you right when they enslave you, if Muslims don't treat you right when they enslave you, what makes you think they're going to treat you right in heaven? So what we're talking about is a dramatic shifting of consciousness that requires you fearlessly reading historical information that will free your mind and allow you to become the determiner of your destiny and to truly understand what God is and what God isn't. This is not for the faint of heart. This is for people who have a true desire to free their mind. And as George Clinton said, if you free your mind, your behind will follow. I guess we got time for one or two more questions, Adjua.
Yes, we're going to have this be our final question. And that question is, are you available for lectures? If so, how does one contact you to schedule that?
So I am available for lectures. I am cutting back my lecture schedule because I need to spend more time writing. But you can reach out to me through IKG or through email address browderfile@yahoo.com, browderfile@yahoo.com. This is what I do for a living, folks. This is the only job I have. And as they said, if you do something that you love to do, you never have to work a day in your life. I don't plan on retiring. I will drop dead doing a lecture. Matter of fact, that's the perfect way for me to go.
Don't
Right
say
now.
that. Wait a minute.
No. I'm serious.
Wait a
Look,
minute. I gotta interject. Wait a second.
Look, one of my uncles was a minister, and Uncle Fred. Uncle Fred did this beautiful sermon, and after the sermon, he sat down in his chair and collapsed. You know, I know. Trust me on this. I know that death is not the end. I don't believe in heaven and hell. I understand and embrace the concepts of the Rehemi Misu, repetition of the birth. I know for a fact that I've been here before. And one of the reasons why I've been able to do the things that I have done is because I've been able to tap into memories of having done them before. So I have a different understanding of life and the afterlife. I'm not afraid of death. Death is a doorway, as T'Challa said when his father died. Death is a doorway, and that on the other side of that doorway, Bast and another figure grab your hand and they walk with you into the beautiful West. So these are concepts or ideas that make life worth living. I'm not afraid to die. You know, let's be serious for 1 minute, because it's 8:58. Look, one of the ways that white folk keep fear in our hearts is making you afraid to give your life worth something worth dying for. Dr. King said, if a person has not found something they're willing to give their life for, they have not found a reason to live, all right? I live for this information because it gives me life. And I know that this information is displeasing to some people. It's displeasing to some people in the Egyptian government. It's displeasing to some people in the American government. So, folk, they're going to come for us one way or another. So if they're going to come for you, you might as well be ready to fight using whatever means you have at your disposal. And there's no greater death than to give your life fighting for what you know to be true, fighting to defend your family and your people. So I say that with love, and I say that with knowledge that life is worth living. And if you live your life right, then you don't mind dying. So with that, Sister Adjua, I'll turn it over to you. Now, I am not planning to go anywhere anytime. Stuff to do. I got books to write. I got other projects to complete. So
yes, indeed.
Thank you
Yes.
so much for this opportunity to come on your Wisdom Wednesday. This is your Wisdom Wednesday, my dear. You've done a massive job raising my child, and you made me proud. So thank you so much, my sister.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm blessed, thankful to know you. And for those who may not know, we're also speaking to Nana Karak. So yes, you have been here. We have been here. And I tell the story. I first learned of you when I was in high school. I can't believe it's been 30 years now. And I read your book, Now Valley Contribution to Civilization, wrote a paper on that, and got an A++ in my class. And who would think that several years later, I would actually meet you and work with you. So I am thankful. 20 years, where does the time go? I do not know. It has been 20 years. This is wonderful. I do want to invite you all out to our next Wisdom Wednesday, taking place April 16th. And we will have Wayne Chandler. Very excited to have Wayne Chandler here speaking on his book, Ancient Future, the teachings and prophetic wisdom of the 7 Hermetic laws of ancient Egypt. Again, you can go to IKG culturalresourcecenter.com and you can register for that event now. You can also go to IKG YouTube page, which is also posted in the chat, to see the replay of this program as well as previous Wisdom Wednesdays. I thank you all for coming out, and I will turn it back over to Tony for our final word of the evening.
Well, the final word of the evening is to be fearless,
Yes.
not foolish, and to move through life with purpose, to know, to understand that you are the vessel through which our ancestors live, breathe, speak, and do their best work. Ashe, happy
Ashe.
solstice, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Peace, everyone.